The Silent Sentinel. Dr. Maya Singh stared through the reinforced observation window at the towering artifact that had turned the scientific community upside down. 8 feet of seamless, midnight blue metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The Martian armor, as it had been dubbed by the media, stood motionless in the center of the testing chamber, as it had for the past 18 months since its discovery. Another rejection, Dr. Singh, reported Dr. Zix, his translucent antennae drooping in disappointment. The Arcturian ambassador they had just tested lay groaning on the chamber floor, her normally iridescent scales now glowing an embarrassing shade of pink. Medical teams rushed in to assist her. Maya rubbed her temples, adding another tick mark to her growing list of failures. That makes 372 attempts, from 146 different species. She spoke into her recorder, maintaining the scientific detachment that had become increasingly difficult to preserve. Subject exhibited typical rejection symptoms: disorientation, temporary pigmentation alteration, and what appears to be spontaneous operatic singing. The ambassador was indeed now belting out what sounded like an ancient Earth aria, much to everyone's bewilderment. The armor had been discovered in the depths of Olympus Mons, sealed within a chamber that bore no resemblance to any known alien architecture. Initial dating put it at roughly 50,000 years old, predating every known spacefaring civilization. Its composition defied analysis, and its purpose remained a mystery, though its humanoid shape suggested it was meant to be worn. The Council is getting impatient, Zix chittered nervously, his compound eyes reflecting the harsh laboratory lights. They're threatening to cut our funding if we don't show results soon. Maya turned to face her colleague, her dark eyes flashing with determination. Then we'll give them results. Bring up the holographic display of the armor's surface markings. The air between them flickered to life with floating symbols and patterns. Maya had spent countless hours studying these enigmatic markings, convinced they held the key to understanding the artifact's purpose. They seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles, never quite the same twice. There's something we're missing, she muttered, manipulating the hologram with practiced gestures. The armor doesn't just reject candidates. It responds to them. Each rejection is unique, personalized. As if to emphasize her point, the ambassador's impromptu opera performance reached a dramatic crescendo before she mercifully passed out. Look at this pattern here. Maya highlighted a recurring symbol. It appears just before each rejection, almost like it's scanning them. Zix suggested, his antennae perking up with interest. Exactly. But scanning for what? She pulled up the data from previous attempts. We've tried representatives from every known sentient species. Warriors, scholars, diplomats, even children. The armor rejects them all, but never the same way twice. The chamber's cleaning robots moved in to sterilize the area, preparing for the next attempt. Maya watched them work, her mind racing through possibilities. The armor stood immobile, its surface occasionally rippling with subtle patterns that seemed almost alive. Dr. Singh, a new voice called from the doorway. Dr. Rashid, the facility's head of security, looked concerned. The Proximan delegation has arrived early. They're insisting on immediate testing. Maya suppressed a groan. The Proximans were notorious for their aggressive approach to ancient artifacts, believing their species had a divine right to all advanced technology. Their last visit had ended with 3 broken containment fields and a diplomatic incident that took weeks to smooth over. Very well, she straightened her lab coat. Prepare the chamber for another test. And Rashid, double the security personnel. Quietly. As the facility burst into activity around her, Maya approached the armor for her pre-test inspection. Standing before it, she felt the same mix of frustration and wonder that had drawn her to xenorchaeology in the first place. The surface patterns seemed to dance in her peripheral vision, but whenever she tried to focus on them directly, they became still. What are you? She whispered to the armor. What are you waiting for? The armor, as always, remained silent, But for just a moment, Maya could have sworn she saw a pattern that looked almost like amusement ripple across its surface. The Proximan delegation arrived with their usual pomp and circumstance, their crystalline exoskeletons catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. Their leader, Supreme Warrior Kthax, stood nearly 9 feet tall and radiated an aura of absolute confidence. "We have studied the previous failures," Kthax announced, his voice like grinding crystals. "They lack the proper approach. The armor clearly requires a warrior's spirit, a proven leader of battle." Maya began her standard warning speech, but Kthax was already striding toward the armor, his crystalline arms outstretched. The chamber's instruments hummed to life, recording every detail of what would undoubtedly be attempt number 373. The armor's surface began to ripple, more actively than Maya had ever seen before. For a moment, her heart leaped. Could this actually be? Then Kthax began to sing. Not opera this time, but what Maya's database identified as disco. His crystalline form had transformed into something resembling a mirror ball, spinning and throwing multicolored lights across the chamber, while he belted out a surprisingly accurate rendition of "Stayin' Alive." "Well," Zix remarked as they watched the mighty warrior dance, "at least this one's entertaining." Maya turned back to her notes, hiding a smile. "Log another rejection. And someone please tell the medical team to bring their strobe lights this time." The artifact continued its silent vigil, its surface patterns now definitely showing what looked like satisfaction. Maya couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, somehow, it was laughing at them all. Patterns of rejection. 6 months after the infamous Proximan Disco incident, the research facility's atmosphere had shifted from scientific optimism to barely contained chaos. Maya's lab had become an unintentional gallery of the armor's creative rejections, each more bizarre than the last. The Centaurian philosopher turned into a living haiku. Maya dictated into her recorder, watching as yet another hopeful candidate was escorted from the chamber. "Everything he says comes out in perfect 575-syllable format. Duration, approximately 6 hours. Dr. Zix hovered nearby, updating their ever-expanding database of rejection phenomena. "That's actually rather poetic compared to last week's incident with the Regellian ambassador." Maya winced at the memory. The ambassador had spent 3 days speaking entirely in ancient Earth commercial jingles. The diplomatic fallout had been complicated. The armor stood in its usual place, its surface occasionally rippling with patterns that seemed more pronounced lately. Maya had begun to notice a correlation between the complexity of these patterns and the elaborateness of the rejections that followed. "Play back the sensor logs from the last 20 attempts," she commanded the lab's eye. Holographic data streams filled the air around her, each showing different aspects of the armor's behavior during testing. "There's definitely a pattern here," she murmured, manipulating the data with practiced gestures. "The armor isn't just rejecting candidates randomly. It's learning, adapting its responses based on each species' cultural background." "To what purpose?" Zix asked, his antennae twitching with curiosity. Before Maya could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red emergency lights began pulsing and security barriers slammed into place around the testing chamber. "Unauthorized access detected in Sector 7. The facility's AI announced calmly. "Warning. Containment breach in progress." Maya's hands flew across the control panel. "Status report. What's happening in Sector 7? "The Andromeden Collective." Dr. Rashid's voice crackled through the comm system. "They've somehow bypassed our outer defenses. They're heading straight for the armor chamber." The Andromedans, a hive mind species known for their single-minded pursuit of advanced technology. Maya had rejected their request for testing months ago, after their preliminary scans showed disturbing signs of hostile intent. "Initiate emergency protocols," Maya ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around her. "Zix, begin data backup procedures. If they're here for the armor." The chamber doors burst open. Andromedan drones poured in, their metallic bodies moving with perfect synchronization. Behind them floated their controller, a mass of shifting silver tendrils surrounding a crystalline core. Dr. Singh. The controller spoke, its voice a chorus of harmonics. We apologize for the unconventional entrance, but you left us no alternative. The artifact must be studied. It must be understood. Maya stood her ground between the Andromedans and the armor. The artifact has rejected every attempt at interface. Your presence here violates 17 different galactic treaties. Individual attempts have failed. The controller agreed. But we are not individuals. We are many, acting as one. The artifact cannot reject us all. The Andromedan drones began to move forward in perfect formation. Maya watched in horror as they surrounded the armor, their silver tendrils reaching out to connect with its surface. Then something unexpected happened. The armor's surface erupted with patterns more complex than any Maya had ever seen. The chamber's instruments went haywire, recording energy signatures that should have been impossible. The Andromedan drones froze in place. Then, one by one, they began to dance. Not the disco of the Proximan incident, but rather a perfectly synchronized routine that Maya's database identified as the Macarena. The controller's crystalline core flickered in confusion as its drones, still connected to the hive mind, performed the 20th century Earth dance with flawless precision. What is happening? The controller demanded, its harmonious voice cracking with confusion. If I had to guess, Maya replied, trying to maintain her professional composure while watching a swarm of hostile aliens perform synchronized dance moves, the armor is rejecting your entire hive mind. Collectively. The dance party lasted for exactly 3 hours, 17 minutes, and 42 seconds. By the time it ended, the Andromedan Collective had signed a formal agreement never to attempt unauthorized access again, if only to avoid another incident of mass rhythmic humiliation. Later, reviewing the data from the incident, Maya noticed something crucial. Zix, she called to her colleague. Look at these patterns. Just before the rejection, the armor wasn't just scanning the Andromedans. It was waiting for something. Waiting for what? Maya stared at the readings, a new theory forming in her mind. Not what, she said slowly. Who? The armor's surface rippled once more, and this time Maya was certain it was showing approval. They were finally asking the right questions. But before she could pursue this revelation further, a new alert caught her attention. Someone had just requested access to the facility. Someone whose credentials listed them as a simple maintenance technician, coming to check on the environmental systems. Maya would later look back on this moment as the point where everything changed, though she had no way of knowing it at the time. She approved the access request without a second thought, focused on her new breakthrough. The armor's patterns shifted again, and this time they almost seemed expectant. The unexpected candidate. Sarah Wong pushed her maintenance cart through the facility's corridors, consulting her tablet. According to the work order, the environmental control system in the main research chamber was showing irregular readings. Just another day's work for a station engineer, or at least, that's what it should have been. Readings are definitely off, she muttered to herself, checking the diagnostic panel near the chamber entrance. The security scanner beeped, verifying her clearance, and the doors slid open with a soft hiss. The chamber beyond was unlike anything she'd seen in her 15 years of space station maintenance. Banks of advanced monitoring equipment lined the walls, and in the center, Sarah whistled softly. In the center stood what looked like a suit of armor, if armor was made from liquid starlight and living metal. "Excuse me," a voice called out. "This is a restricted area during testing hours." Dr. Maya Singh strode toward her, datapad in hand. "We're in the middle of important research. Won't be long," Sarah assured her, already pulling out her diagnostic tools. "Just need to check the environmental controls. These readings are way off baseline. And with sensitive equipment like this," she gestured at the various monitors. "Better safe than sorry, right?" That's when it happened. The armor, which had stood motionless through countless official tests and diplomatic visits, began to hum. A sound like distant wind chimes filled the chamber, and its surface erupted with cascading patterns of light. "Step back," Dr. Singh shouted, but Sarah was already moving. Toward the armor, not away from it. Something about those patterns. They reminded her of the diagnostic readouts she dealt with daily. Power fluctuations, system irregularities. "Hey," she said, approaching the armor with professional concern. "Your power distribution is totally unbalanced. No wonder the environmental systems are going haywire. Look at these harmonic patterns. You're bleeding energy all over the place." The armor's surface rippled in what Sarah could have sworn was relief. Then, to everyone's astonishment, it began to unfold like a blooming flower, panels sliding apart with liquid grace. "Impossible," Dr. Singh breathed. "We've tried everything, every known species, every possible approach. Except basic maintenance," Sarah mused, studying the now open armor with practiced eyes. "These connection points here, they're meant for power regulation, aren't they? And this interface." She reached out, more fascinated by the technical challenge than awed by the ancient artifact. The armor moved, not away from her touch, as it had with countless others, but toward it. Plates shifted and flowed, adjusting to her dimensions with perfect precision. Before anyone could react, Sarah found herself enveloped in living metal that felt like a second skin. "Oh," she said, surprised but not alarmed. "That's neat. The neural interface is actually pretty intuitive, though your power cycling could use some work. Want me to take a look at that?" A voice like crystal wind chimes echoed through her mind. "Engineer Sarah Wong," it said, warmth and amusement coloring its tones. "After 50,000 years of waiting, you have no idea how refreshing it is to finally meet someone who notices the important things." The chamber erupted into chaos. Scientists rushed to record data, security personnel raised weapons uncertainly, and Dr. Singh looked like she couldn't decide whether to celebrate or faint. "I don't suppose," Sarah said conversationally to both the armor and the stunned onlookers, "anyone would mind if I finished checking those environmental controls first. Professional pride, you know." The armor's laughter rang like bells in her mind, and its surface rippled with patterns that somehow conveyed both absolute joy and 50,000 years' worth of exasperation at being treated as a mystical artifact rather than a sophisticated piece of technology that just needed proper maintenance. "By all means," the armor's voice chimed in her thoughts. "We have much to discuss. But first things first, shall we optimize these systems? Your species' approach to technical problems is exactly what we were waiting for." And so, while the scientific community tried to process the fact that their greatest discovery had chosen a maintenance engineer over diplomats and warriors, Sarah Wong began the first proper diagnostic check the armor had received in 50 millennia. The future of human-alien relations, it seemed, would be built on a foundation of proper maintenance schedules and regulatory compliance. The armor couldn't have been happier about it. Trial by fire. The research facility's alarms blared for the second time that day. But this time, the cause wasn't a maintenance issue. Hostile ships had breached the outer defense perimeter, their intentions clear. "Pirates," Dr. Singh announced grimly, watching the security feeds. "Looks like word got out about our breakthrough." She turned to Sarah, still melded with the ancient armor. "They're after you. Both of you." Sarah was barely listening, too absorbed in the armor systems. "Hey, did you know your quantum stabilizers are running at only 60% efficiency? No wonder the environmental controls wear." "Engineer Sarah," the armor's crystalline voice interrupted in her mind. "While I deeply appreciate your attention to maintenance, perhaps we should address the immediate tactical situation." "Oh, right." Sarah straightened, the armor flowing like liquid metal around her. "So about those defense systems you mentioned. The pirates breached the facility's outer doors with practiced efficiency. They were a mixed group, fallen military specialists, black market tech hunters, and mercenaries from a dozen species. Their leader, a scared draconian named Vex, moved with predatory grace. "Secure the artifact and its new host," he commanded. "The buyer wants them both intact." What the pirates didn't expect was to find their target casually leaning against a corridor wall, examining a maintenance panel. "You know," Sarah called out conversationally, "your plasma cutters left carbon scoring all over these walls. That's going to play havoc with the atmospheric processors." She shook her head disapprovingly. "Also, your weapons. The power signatures are really unstable. When's the last time you had them serviced?" The pirates stared, momentarily thrown by this unexpected response to their dramatic entrance. "Surrender the armor," Vex demanded, recovering quickly. "Or we'll—" "Hold that thought," Sarah interrupted, the armor's surface rippling with diagnostic patterns. "Are you using Mark II plasma rifles? Those things are notorious for overheating. Here, let me show you." Before anyone could react, she moved. The armor enhanced her natural movements with fluid grace, crossing the space between them in milliseconds. Rather than attacking, however, she simply plucked a rifle from the nearest pirate's hands and began disassembling it. "See this power coupling? Completely worn out. You're losing at least 30% efficiency, not to mention the safety risks. Who's been maintaining these?" The pirates looked at each other, clearly unsure how to handle a target who seemed more concerned about their equipment maintenance than their hostile intentions. "We're not here for a maintenance check," Vex roared, raising his own weapon. "We're here to violate about 15 different safety protocols." Sarah finished, still focused on the disassembled rifle. "Because honestly, the way you've modified these weapons, one wrong move and they'll overload spectacularly. Want me to show you?" The armor hummed with amusement as Sarah activated what it helpfully informed her was a localized gravity manipulation field. The entire pirate force suddenly found themselves floating gently toward the ceiling, their weapons drifting harmlessly away. Now, Sarah continued, reassembling the rifle with several significant improvements. "About your ship's engines. I couldn't help but notice some serious inefficiencies in your power output when you landed. Have you considered upgrading your containment fields?" "Is this," one of the floating pirates asked another, "how getting captured is supposed to feel?" "Because I think we're failing a safety inspection." The facility's security forces arrived to find the situation well in hand, if somewhat unconventional. The pirates were still floating near the ceiling. Their weapons had all been thoroughly serviced and safety-locked, and Sarah was enthusiastically explaining proper maintenance documentation procedures to anyone who would listen. "Remember," she called out as the security teams led the thoroughly demoralized pirates away, "regular calibration checks are important. And please do something about those engine harmonics. They're giving me anxiety." Dr. Singh watched this scene unfold with a mixture of amazement and dawning understanding. "The armor didn't just choose you for your technical skills," she said to Sarah. "It chose you for how you use them." Sarah nodded, the armor's surface rippling with approval. "Sometimes the best defense isn't overwhelming force or advanced technology," she replied. "Sometimes it's just making sure everything works properly. And if you can't beat them," the armor's voice chimed in her mind, "teach them proper maintenance procedures." Sarah finished with a grin. "Speaking of which, we really should look at those environmental controls now. They're still not properly balanced." As Sarah headed off to continue her original maintenance tasks, now accompanied by an ancient suit of living armor that seemed equally enthusiastic about proper system optimization, Dr. Singh couldn't help but laugh. The greatest discovery in human history had turned out to be less about advanced weapons or mysterious powers, and more about the uniquely human approach to problem solving. When in doubt, check the manual and make sure everything's running efficiently. The galaxy, it seemed, had been waiting for a species that would treat even the most advanced alien artifacts like they were just another system that needed maintenance. Humanity, with its practical approach to technical problems, had finally proven itself worthy, not through combat or diplomacy, but through good old-fashioned engineering common sense. Legacy of the Starborn. 2 weeks after what became known as The Great Maintenance Inspection Incident. The research facility had transformed. Sarah and the armor, now working in perfect harmony, had revolutionized not just the facility's systems, but the entire understanding of the armor's creators. They weren't mystical beings or all-powerful ancients, Sarah explained to Dr. Singh, surrounded by holographic displays showing the armor's historical records. They were engineers. Really good engineers who got tired of seeing their technology misused. The armor's surface rippled in agreement, projecting images of its creators, a species that had valued efficiency and proper maintenance above all else. They had seeded their technology throughout the galaxy, but with a crucial caveat. It would only work for those who understood its true nature. Think about it, Sarah continued, absently adjusting a power coupling while speaking. Every species that tried to activate the armor treated it like a weapon, a symbol of power, or a mystical artifact. None of them fought to check if it just needed a tune-up. Dr. Singh watched as Sarah and the armor worked in perfect synchronization, fixing systems that had been running suboptimally for decades. They were waiting for humanity all along. Not exactly. The armor's crystalline voice echoed through the chamber speakers, now properly calibrated for optimal acoustic resonance. We were waiting for a species that would approach advanced technology with practical understanding rather than reverence. Humans, with their endless drive to understand how things work, proved to be exactly what we sought. The implications were staggering. Across the galaxy, other pieces of ancient artifacts began responding to human maintenance workers and engineers. What other species had dismissed as mystical relics turned out to be sophisticated technology, simply waiting for someone to read the manual and check the power levels. The true legacy of the Starborn, Sarah mused, reviewing the armor's maintenance logs, wasn't their advanced technology. It was their philosophy. The most powerful technology in the universe is useless if you don't take care of it properly. The galaxy was changing. Human engineers were suddenly in high demand, not for their combat prowess or diplomatic skills, but for their practical approach to problem-solving. The age of treating ancient technology with religious reverence was giving way to an era of proper maintenance schedules and regular system diagnostics. There's more out there, the armor told Sarah as they worked. More technology, more systems waiting for the right touch. Our creators believe that true advancement comes not from discovering new technology, but from properly maintaining what already exists. And so, humanity found its place in the galactic community, not as warriors, diplomats, or mystics, but as the species that remembered to check the manual first. The future would be built not on the ashes of ancient mysteries, but on well-maintained systems and properly calibrated equipment. As Sarah completed her latest maintenance report, now including notes on quantum field harmonics and transdimensional power flow, she couldn't help but smile. The greatest technology in the universe had chosen humanity not for their strength or wisdom, but for their unwavering belief that even the most advanced alien artifact probably just needed its systems checked and its power couplings adjusted. Ready to check those other facilities, she asked the armor, their bond now as natural as breathing. The armor's surface rippled with anticipation. Indeed, there are many systems out there in need of proper maintenance.